A crazy week in Corvallis as the Beavers get ready for Saturday with a third-string quarterback at the helm. What do our analysts think of Marcus McMaryion? Plus, we're talking a little Beavers basketball. We go one-on-one with Wayne Tinkle to get his take on the upcoming season. And is Oregon State's next opponent, Washington, a national championship contender? All that and more ahead on Talking Beavers. Well, the toughest test of the season this week for the Beavers as they head to Husky Stadium on Saturday. And it comes at a tough time for the Beavers. Oregon State now down to their third-string quarterback as they get ready to face one of the best defensive fronts in the country. Welcome into Talkin' Beavers. Amanda Maynard alongside Lindsay Schnell, James Dockery, Nigel Burton. And before we talk Washington, Saturday was a pretty interesting game for this team. Lose by only 5 points to a top 25 team. And it really seemed like, if the offense played a little bit better, you didn't have those special teams miscues, that they could have won this. Do you feel like they're on the right track?
Gary Anderson thought that they should have won. Do I think they're on the right track? Yeah, I think we see a lot of improvement, but I think they're going to play the second half of the season without their starting quarterback, and that's not good. And the special team stuff, that bothers me that's not shored up at this point in the season.
Yeah, those type of things will always come back to bite you. You lose games hitting yardage and the third phase of football, which is special teams. We got to shore that up. But again, I think that's going to be a telltale story when we come back here on Wednesdays and we talk about the Beavers, them being close but not quite, learning how to get over the edge.
Yeah, I just think it's one. 3 weeks ago, they go to Colorado, who's in first place in the South, lose by 41 points. Then turn around, beat Cal, and then the other team who's first in the South, you really outplayed them, should have beat them, lose by 5 at home. There's no question they're moving in the right direction. Just like Lindsay said, they're beat up right now. But, I think fans want to see this linear improvement, and anybody who's dealt with 18 to 22-year-olds knows that
it's like this.
Yeah, it's never linear.
The roller coaster.
It's just how it goes. I think as much as there's been ebbs and flows, it is still matriculating upward. So I don't have any question on that. I think you'd be hard-pressed to argue that it wasn't, that it's not.
Right. All right, time now to get to our Wilson Motor Game Balls. And who do we have here, guys? Lindsay, you're first up.
Okay, Bright. Amanda, you got to help me say his last name.
Weibu.
Bright. I'll learn it, I promise. A bright spot for the D, and in the whole game, finished with 11 tackles. That type of thing gives me some hope that things are moving in the right direction because this defense was terrible last year.
All right, Doc, you're next.
I got a guy that I've been calling his name a lot this year. I think it's a little bit of DB love, but Devin Chappelle, he continues to be a big-time DB. He gives the beat here and there, but he's always showing up on tape making bone-crushing hits. I got a text from a guy on the East Coast that saw that hit, so you know you're making big plays.
All right, Nigel.
Listen, we were on this dude's head last year. Lindsay and I, at some point, I actually felt bad for about a half second. But Victor Bolden has really stepped his game up these last couple of games. Love what he's doing. Listen, you come out of a game, and I know it was ugly offensively, but he was a leading rusher, and you're the leading receiver, and you're the leading guy on special teams. That's the trifecta you got to get my game ball.
So Ryan Nall is doubtful for the game. He re-injured that left foot injury. Left really very, very early. I think it was the Beavers' second drive. Do you expect them to utilize Victor a little more in the run game?
Well, first of all, I would just like to say that I anticipated this happening and our first or second show when I said, gosh, I don't know if Daryl Garrettson will last until November. Here it is, October 19th, and the kid is not standing. They're going to have to get Victor more involved. I think they're going to have to get Seth Collins a little more involved. You're kind of out of options almost.
I wouldn't anticipate it. Listen, the guy got 7 carries in the last game. As a wide receiver, he shouldn't get any more than those. So I'd say, yeah, in terms of you can't keep running the fly sweep. You're going to get somebody murdered because all you got to do then is you tell the defensive end, widen out, shoot up the field, and that guy wakes up on Tuesday. So, what he got was good. I think the load should actually fall to Artavis Pierce and Tim Cook. I'd actually like to see Paul Lucas get a lot more run out in the slot because they're struggling wide receiver so badly. They can't get guys to run the right routes, make plays in space. I would like to see Paul Lucas get a chance to really affect the game more out there and let 2 guys that I think we feel pretty confident about in the backfield and Cook and Pierce get some run back there.
Yeah, I think definitely, running back by committee. There's a stable of backs back there with Tim Cook and then Artavis Pierce. And then, like you said, Paul Lucas is a guy that I've been wanting to see since the spring, so I'm really looking forward to him being able to get involved as well.
Yeah, how comfortable do you feel with Artavis Pierce back there? Especially because, Nall hasn't finished a game. Has he finished a game yet? He might have not played a full game. He's been injured or re-injured in every game.
I know Ryan is a physical force, and he is a a hard runner, and he plays with heart. But in terms of true running back prowess and true running back talent, Artavis Pierce is actually better at that. But Ryan Nall is such a physical force, and he brings so much to that football team. That's why he's the guy.
You know, and I don't really think it matters about if you're comfortable or not. At this point, you don't have a choice. You have to get it done. Can people stay healthy, you know, the rest of the season? This is only the midway point, you guys. I'm worried about them.
Yeah, Ryan Nall is the guy that I've been wanting to see play all year and just really get in his rhythm. We always talk about how he's built to last and built for the long haul to really get momentum going in the run game. But every time you get that glimpse of Ryan, then the next week you don't get him back. So, you know, hey, you got to get healthy and stay in the game.
All right, a little later in the show, we are talking basketball. We're going one-on-one with head coach Wayne Tinkle, what his expectations are for the season. And up next, the Beavers are majorly banged up at quarterback. What do analysts think of Marcus McMarion's potential?
And it's a Pierce. No, kept it. Garrettson keeps it himself. Garrettson now throwing with confidence. And once again, Garrettson now he's going to have to ask to come out. He tried to play through the pain. Connor Blount has come in, the freshman quarterback. Keeps it. Moves it out to the 13th. Blount's looking that way. Avoids the first bit of rush. Steps into more. And the ball came loose. Blount's hurt as well. And Oregon State's about to go to its third quarterback in 3 possessions.
And in tonight's Les Schwab Quick Fix, we were talking about a rough week for Oregon State. They learned that they lose starting quarterback Darrell Garrettson for the rest of the season after breaking his ankle, and backup quarterback Connor Blount won't be able to go either. He's dealing with a knee injury, so he won't be available this week either. To discuss, let's bring in Mike Parker from Corvallis. And Mike, with all these quarterback injuries, what is the mood around this team regarding these two?
Well, certainly disappointment, Amanda, that 2 fine young men who've worked hard, Darrell Garrettson, to lose the rest of the year with the injury that he sustained. Very disappointing for a guy that showed toughness. He continued to play in that game against Utah, even with the severity of that injury. And then Connor Blount came in, and Connor had done some nice things early, pinch hitting for Darrell Garrettson earlier in the year, but he too had his knee rolled up and will be out for an undetermined amount of time. So the Beavers are down to a third man, but to lose Garrettson and Blount and going to Husky Stadium in Seattle, not necessarily the best of all possible worlds.
So Marcus McMarion for the Beavers getting the start this weekend against a very difficult Washington defense. What encourages you about McMarion?
The main thing, Amanda, is his poise, his lack of being rattled. Kevin McGibbon, his coach, told me this week, the quarterback coach and coordinator, that he says nothing really phases him. There's an even-keeled demeanor that I think inspires confidence for his teammates. The offensive line has all come together. The receivers, the O-line, the coaches, everybody on this team is rallying behind a guy they really believe in, they really like, they really trust. And beyond all of those sort of intangibles, he throws a good ball. He's probably the most accurate passer. He can get the ball into some tight windows. He has some experience, so it's not as though he's being thrown to the dogs up north in a situation he's never been in before. He started the Civil War last year and played very well in Eugene in a tough environment.
Now, does it seem like we might see Seth Collins this weekend, and how might we see him?
We'll certainly see Seth Collins. Now, how he's going to be used, of course, is a bit of a mystery, but Gary Anderson did acknowledge that because Seth has experience at quarterback and suddenly the Beavers are very thin there, and they are probably loath to burn Mason Moran's red shirt at this stage of the season, I think there's a belief that Marcus can go wire to wire in this game. But Coach Anderson acknowledged that Seth Collins may be used some because he has quarterback experience in more of a quarterbacking type of role. Kevin McGibbon said that the way Seth was being used a little more often earlier this year, taking direct snaps, we could see more of that. I think Beaver Nation is hopeful to see the Seth Collins that took direct snaps 3 times to the house against Oregon and Eugene last year.
All right. Thanks, Mike. So with the preface that Darrell Garrettson and Connor Blount haven't been playing well regardless, how big of a blow is losing the two of them?
Okay, well, depth-wise, it's a huge blow, right? Because, look, you're about to play a team that they could kill someone. I mean, Nigel and I have seen Washington in person. They're legit. I think that probably they should have held like open tryouts this week to bring in some walk-ons and send them out as sacrificial lambs. I'm concerned about the Washington defensive line killing future Oregon State quarterbacks. So that is a big blow. But yeah, they haven't been passing the ball well. And I know that Doc likes McMaryion a lot. He did a lot of good things in the Civil War last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that actually I do like Marcus a lot. He's a great young man, first and foremost, but I do think that he has not gotten a fair crack at really being the guy at Oregon State. I thought that when he got in there last year, he wasn't in a favorable position. I remember the very first play he got into the game was backed up in their own territory with a screenplay, and that got intercepted, and then he got pulled out the next series. So I think, with some more experience, I think Marcus can be a serviceable player for us this week. Maybe not this week. Let me rephrase that.
Okay. Listen, I trust the coaching staff. I've been to plenty of Oregon State practices, and if you go to practice and you pay attention, there's no doubt that the number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks at Oregon State were Darrell Garretson and Connor Blount. I mean, there wasn't like, maybe. There just wasn't in terms of command of the offense, command of the huddle, completion percentage in practice. Guys, I mean, I remember watching fall camp last year, and Marcus and Seth, for that matter, struggled to do a bubble drill. Literally just a guy looping and just dumping it out to him. I think the completion percentage is like 25%. So, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen this week. I'm hopeful that some things turn the corner. And I know Doc's point about the Civil War game. I looked at the stats and I give you that, he had 154 yards passing and everything, but you're talking about a defense that gave up 300 and almost 10 per game last year. So, we'll see what happens, and hopefully there's nothing going to be better for Marcus than a run game. And I don't dismiss the fact that they're going to be able to run the ball with some effect on Saturday.
I think a big thing is going to be Garretson and Connor hanging around and being in Marcus's ear, walking him through some stuff, talking to him. Garretson especially. I think that they will do that, but it's just hard sometimes to stay engaged when you're injured. But this is just, all I'm going to say is Luke Del Rio is starting at Florida, if you were curious. It's going to be a rough week.
With Seth Collins, I mean, obviously he was taking snaps at quarterback. It seems like they're kind of, looking at him as the second guy this week. I mean, how do you?
There's nobody else. There's nobody else.
I mean,
I'm telling you, open tryouts.
How do you think they can utilize him this weekend?
I mean, at this point, just put him back there and let him play quarterback. I mean, I'm not saying I would necessarily do that, but I mean, we've been averaging like 60 yards passing per game. So I mean, I'm not saying
Can't
I can
get
go
much
out there and be the
worse, right?
quarterback, but this is a Pac-12. 60 yards passing a game is not really going to cut it.
Would you rather have him than McMaryion? You want to throw him in there or no?
No,
Okay.
because I agree with Parker that McMaryion is probably the most accurate passer.
Between the two of them, I mean, the stats don't say that. I mean, you look at the stats last year; it wasn't close. I mean, Seth was a little above 50%. Marcus was at 40. So,
again, the play calling got different when Marcus got in the game last year. I mean, I just don't. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I do. So I'm not going to question that one. So listen, what it really comes down to is you're talking about a passing game that's struggling. You don't take the one guy who's making plays, the one guy that you could throw into traffic and count on to at least have a 50-50 chance of the ball, taking him away from the receiving core at this point, the way everybody else is playing, short of Victor Bolden, who's starting to move in the right direction. I think you just handcuffed yourself even worse because once again, like Giselle said, can't throw the ball to yourself. So who's going to make the ball? I mean, who's going to make the catch?
Best line of the night. I love that. That was always a great line from our best friend Giselle here. All right, a little later in the show, Washington, of course, ranked tops in the country. Are they a college football playoff team? But first, the Beavers defense has had a strong performance against Utah. How they match up against one of the best offenses in the nation. And don't forget to catch Inside the Huddle Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Gary Anderson is going to be joining the crew to break down Saturday's game against Washington and talk a little bit about some of those passing struggles they've been having. And it is time now for our standard TV and appliance play breakdown. And Nigel, we're taking a look at the defense who really kept this game pretty close.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, the defense played their absolute butts off in this game. And just a couple examples of what they did and how they were able to turn the tide of this football game. Now, starting off early on, this is a great example of how guys just doing their job keeps people in the football game. Not worried about what happens back here, but here's Devin Chappelle, does a great job And this is a point in the game that was pretty critical because Utah's trying to get a score going into half. But his rule is never let number 3 cross your face. Well, he recognizes the fact that this receiver coming across is going to be his new number 3. He also recognizes the block. So here's the next thing he does. He doesn't just beat the block by going any way he wants. He beats it with leverage. He understands that all the boys are inside, and I want to make sure that I make this receiver, worst case scenario, cut up field to them. But not only does he beat the block, but he makes a huge play, huge hit, causes the takeaway, and it was a huge momentum swing for the Beavers. Now, the next thing, going into playing quarters defense, which what you really have here is every DB is responsible for their deep quarter of the field. The guys who are most critical to this type of coverage working are the linebackers. They have to do a good job of staying underneath and being responsible for the hook to curls and the flats. A lot easier said than done. So once the pass combination goes through, now here's the next thing that's critical. You got to be disciplined about what you do. You can't just run around and start saying, oh, Troy Williams, he's an athlete. I'm going to run and go try to tackle him. You got to stay in coverage. And here you've got our boy Manasseh Hungaloo, who stays in coverage, and as Troy Williams is looking to pass, stays underneath and makes a great pass breakup. They've been absolutely critical to the success, the pass defensive success for the Beavers. The last thing is, once again, same as against Cal, 4th and 3, watching the big boys step up and making plays. Here, our boy Kalani V absolutely destroys the center and kind of starts everything going backwards for the Utes, and a big play for the Beavers. And that has been absolutely critical, him and Elu Aiden, and how critical those guys have been in stopping short yardage plays.
What do you attribute this improvement on the defense to?
Yeah, well, one, guys are just getting older. I mean, to be honest with you, it's Kevin Clune. Kevin's done a great job of, especially with halftime adjustments. You notice a lot of times in the second half, the Beavers have been a little stronger. It's because he's done a great job of communicating to those guys, hey, here's what we need to do and the adjustments we need to make. And then really, I think it's also the secondary. The secondary has been playing lights out football. And as you can see by our fan poll, everybody recognizes the fact those guys are playing way above par.
All right, time now for our Flat Tail Brewing Damn Good Moment of the Week.
Devin Chappelle for the biggest hit of the game, just blowing up Corey Butler-Bird.
Video game interpretation of that big hit. Now, we are asking you to weigh in on the defense this season. Our Twitter poll question this week: who has been the best defensive player so far this season? Here are your choices: Treston Decoud, Devin Chappelle, or Bright Ugwebu, or other. We take write-in candidates on this this poll this week. Who's your vote, guys?
I have Tristan. I think it's Decoud, actually.
Decoud.
Decoud.
The D is silent.
The D is silent because it's French.
Very French.
But because what he did with Chad Hansen was just blew me away, period, the end. I mean, Hansen, I wrote a story on him this week on SI.com, and he's one of the best receivers in the country. You know, the numbers back that up, even with a bad game against Oregon State. So Tristan has been impressive at other points, too.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Devin on that because I think Devin has a blend of, he's doing it at all 3 phases of the defense. He's getting sacks on the quarterback, he's making open field tackles in the middle of the field, and he's also defending on some deep balls and laying the wood. He's putting that physicality on tape, so when receivers watch it across the conference, they know they got somebody back there to look for.
I mean, you can make a case for both those guys, and I wouldn't argue with you on either one of them, and especially when you talk about how Tristan's been challenged really week after week with some great wide receivers and stepped up. Just to be different, I'm going to go with Bright Ugwebu. It's Ugwebu. That's how you say it.
Ugwebu.
I'll practice at home.
We're all practicing
nightmare. It's just I remember when I watched them in practice, I remember going back and saying, you know, when you look at their defense, he looks like what a Pac-12 linebacker is supposed to look like. He moves like a Pac-12 linebacker is supposed to move like. And when you could still see some talent gap in some areas, that was the one guy when you watched him, how sudden he was. He was instinctual. He used his hands, all those different things. That the sky's limit. He's only a sophomore. So I think he's a guy that if he continues to develop, you can watch probably on Sundays.
So we're going to talk more about the Washington offense in a little bit. But do you feel like this defense can keep it respectable?
No.
That's
no one
a very
can.
quick answer.
No, but that's not necessarily a knock on this defense. Washington is really, 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 really good. So I don't think the defense can keep it respectable. This is Wednesday night that we're talking to you. As of Tuesday night, the line was 38.5 points. I think it might be worse than that.
Hey, I know I'm like the optimistic Beaver on the show, but I think the Beavers are going to hang for a while, and I don't think it'll be a 40-point win.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if this defense plays its capability, yeah, they can. I mean, you're right. They've got a ton of weapons, but the way that they're improving, I don't put anything past them.
All right, you heard it here. Still on the
Nigel
show.
has forgotten how hard it is to play in Seattle, even though he went to school there.
Well, Washington has certainly proved it is for real with dominant wins so far this season. Can they still make the playoffs with a loss? And after the break, we're talking a little basketball with Wayne Tinkle. Can they make the tournament again? Taking time out to talk a little Beavers basketball. Year 3 of the Wayne Tinkle era, and the basketball team will really look a lot different than the team that made the tournament last season, particularly the graduation of Gary Payton II. Certainly will miss his production. You're taking a look. He accounted for almost 22% of the team's points and rebounds last season, almost 40% of their assists. Signed a free agent contract with the Houston Rockets this summer. Now, of course, hopes are high still around Corvallis this year after Oregon State made the tournament for the first time in 26 years last spring. But Wayne Tinkle is quick to put any postseason talk to rest. Our Lindsay Schnell sat down with him to talk a little bit about what he thinks this season brings.
How much pressure do you guys feel right now? The football team is not doing what everyone wants, and a lot of people are excited for basketball.
I mean, I've never really thought about it like that. I know that the expectations because of what we did last year, what are they going to do for an encore? Well, this is a completely different team. We've got a very young team. We've got 12 of our 13 guys are first or second year players. So I'm going to keep, and I'm not just saying this to take pressure off, but just keep sending the message that we've got to be patient. This is a totally new group. There are going to be some bumps in the road along the way, and that we just need to stay focused on the now in hopes of, what our teams usually do, peak at the right time, late in the season.
You have a good core returning group that did something last year that would give people a lot of confidence. How big is that going to be going forward this year?
Well, I think it's big that, they'll have some confidence. We've got to make sure that that doesn't go overboard. Right now, what we really look at this year as is not to necessarily exceed what we did a year ago, but now we've got to put our stamp on how are we going to build this program moving forward. I mean, we've been here a couple of years, but our classes were all kind of messed up, and now we've got to a point where we can start to build consistency, if that makes sense. So toughness is going to be one of those things. Maturity, those are going to be pillars of our program. This team this year has to really identify that and build off of it. And then after that, we can start talking about more specifics as far as goals and what we can do as a team this year.
And we are breaking down the Beavers in our Comcast business class, built for performance. Guys, do you think this team can make the NCAA tournament?
I mean, look, we're a long ways away from that. I'm not entirely sure what the Pac-12 is going to look like this year. I know that it's good to have Trace Tinkle back. He's been banged up so long. I think that he took enough time off that he will be able to stay healthy this season, fingers crossed. Ja'Cory McLaughlin, this freshman that Lamar's been talking about for like 3 years, I think is going to live up to the hype. He looks really fun. He's got this great charisma and maturity to him. I know that James Dockery is really excited for basketball season.
Yes,
I think that there's some pressure on the team in terms of people want something to be excited about, and they're not excited about football right now. So it goes a long way having a good basketball team.
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely excited. I mean, I love what Coach Tinkle's doing down there. Even more so, I love what his son is doing down there when he's on the court. I think he's one of the best, stretch forwards in the game in the Pac-12 right now. And you pair him down there with Drew Eubanks, I love him like a little mini Blake Griffin. Maybe not all the way Blake Griffin, but he can dunk on some guys, and I like that.
We actually had a discussion. We'll probably show this footage later on this season about who is the best dunker on the team. Is it Drew or is it Ja'Cory? And Ja'Cory said that it's him. And then Trace backed that up, that Ja'Cory has a little more bounce than Drew. Wayne Tinkle rolled his eyes when we were talking about this. Said that it's obviously
guy,
Drew.
Nigel, what's your take?
Yeah, I just think when you look at the Pac-12 schedule, I mean, if you're that person who does W's and L's, you're probably looking at 9-9 is a pretty positive outlook, I think, which means you got to go probably 10-3 to have a legit shot, to have any shot, and maybe even 11-2 to get in the tournament. And you look at their schedule, I think it's doable. I mean, still got to go to Charlotte, still got to go to Nevada, still got to go to Tulsa, the home games. But you don't see that tournament where they got thrown in with a Kentucky and where those are automatic L's. So
right.
It'll be interesting to see how quickly a young team develops.
Gonna miss a lot with GP2. He did so much defensively that never showed up in a statistical category, but I think that Tinkle's a great coach. They're up to the task.
And a little later in the show, a closer look at the Huskies. What will it take for Washington to make the college football playoff? And is Jake Browning a legitimate Heisman candidate? Our analysts talk about his game after the break.
We like Jake a ton. I mean, we just like what he's all about. You know, he's very committed, very focused, very into improving.
Jake, he's a natural competitor. That's what I like about him. I mean, he goes out and ready to compete every game. He does not like losing at all. When you got that at quarterback, that's a great thing, you know?
He's a quarterback that you want to play for, that you want to play with. He's not going to back down from a challenge. He's not going to back down from nothing. He's a natural-born leader.
Well, a very impressive season so far for Washington quarterback Jake Browning. So much so, he is very much in the Heisman Trophy talk. Leads the nation in both passer rating and completion percentage. And he's been pretty excellent in just about every facet of the game. We're taking a look at Browning in our Toyota of Portland on Broadway tune-up. What makes him so good? Because again, I mean, it seems like he just is good at everything.
He overthrew his receivers all the time last year, so he's calmed down finally. I think he's just comfortable in the offense. You know, he's a sophomore now, makes a big difference. But you guys, he's just accurate. Like 23 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. He leads the country in completion percentage. I think it's 72. He's on, and they are beaten up on teams, you know, which certainly helps. But Nigel, you and I saw him live against Stanford, and wow,
it's dumb. I mean, it's dumb. It's really the weapons around him is what makes it dumb. You know, it said earlier going into this season that this team was going to go as far as Jake Browning could take them. And Jake Browning has managed to have one of the greatest seasons in Washington football history up to this point. Now, the thing that I think makes him great, as much as it's Pettis and the running game, and, you know, you've got John Ross and Chico McClatchy, all those guys, it's the offensive line. I've never seen a guy sit back there and not be touched for so long. There was a play I think we broke down when I was with a different network, won't say who, but he had 6 seconds to torch somebody. There's nobody.
Nobody live can
he's
cover that long.
He's coming out of games clean. So he's not being touched. He's got great athletes to throw to. He's got a dominant defense who sets him up a lot of times with short fields. I mean, right now, it's a perfect storm if you're playing against him.
And the thing that you can't really measure is the stuff that those guys are talking about in the interviews, talking about how he's a guy that people want to play for, that they want to be around. He's a competitor. He doesn't like to lose. Those are everything that you're saying in that are guys that you want to go to the park with, to the gym with, anywhere with. And so that moxie, you seeing him pointing to the guys on Oregon when he scores, that little stuff right there, the coach may not like it every time, but the players are like, yeah, that's my guy. Okay.
and that's the huge difference between Jake last year and Jake this year. Last year being a true freshman, kind of just being happy to be there, and I'm just trying to figure out the offense, leave me alone. Now, after that full year in his command of the offense, he can kind of be him, and right now he's just taking complete control of that team.
He's not going to win the Heisman, though. I think that we should say that. I mean, up front, first of all, Lamar Jackson is going to have some sort of spectacularly bad game to fall out of the first place spot. But also, like, it's really hard to win the Heisman on the West Coast. We saw that last year. Christian McCaffrey should have won it last year, but Stanford kicked late a lot of the time. Those Heisman voters weren't staying awake. Washington's fallen into the same trap right now. I don't think anyone knew they were going to be this good. So, but maybe he gets invited to New York.
Yeah, if Lamar Jackson gets hurt, that's where he'll lose it. So if he gets hurt and he disappears for a couple weeks, but then it'll go to J.T. Barrett, Jabril Peppers, who, by the way, doesn't play linebacker. He's a defensive back, but he plays everything for Michigan. He is Charles Woodson, the second coming. And so those would be the guys who end up going way before Browning would.
And, I mean, this Huskies defense is pretty incredible as well. I mean, Lindsay, you were talking about, I think maybe last week.
They're
just
so
how good
physical.
They are.
They're so physical. I mean, they dominated Stanford physically, which we have not seen in the David Shaw era, I don't think. And I don't think we really ever saw it in the Harbaugh era either. And Nigel and I were both at that game, standing on the sideline talking about they just beat teams up, and they're salty. And they were last year, too. You know, their defense has been has had the pieces put together the last few seasons. Finally, it's the offense that's coming around. But this D, like, we're not that surprised. Buda Baker is one of the best safeties in the country.
Yeah, their defensive line, the smallest guy on the defensive line is 310 pounds. That's the smallest guy. It's 310, 320, 330. You've got two of the most physical linebackers in Keyshawn and Azim Victor. Then you've got the deepest secondary in the entire nation, Buda Baker. You can go Jones. You can go Gardenshire. I mean, there's just so many guys running around back there. Now, here's the thing. They're number one in total defense, or excuse me, number one in scoring defense, number one in pass defense, but they're number 6 in rush defense. And that's the thing that I think gives the Beavers a glimmer of hope to have some offensive success on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, what do you feel like is the key to moving the football on offense for you guys?
Well, I think, as Nigel was just talking about, part of why Jake Browning is really good is that he has all that time, in the pocket. Oregon State is going to have to protect their third-string quarterback to make sure.
We have seen is kind of questionable.
So run the football and run it and run it and run it. Just run it. Just run the ball. Don't drop back, like ever. All
right, still more to come here on Talking Beavers, and James is getting you ready for the Washington game at the OSU Beaver Store.
Hey, what's going on, Beaver Nation? We're back here at the OSU Beaver Store campus location, and this week our guys are taking on the Huskies. So before I go up to Seattle myself, I stopped by to check out a hat. No better place to buy a hat than the OSU Beaver Store campus location. There's hundreds of hats for you to choose from. Some of the ones I'm looking at right here are the Oregon State snapbacks. Not just this one, there's plenty of different options for you to choose from. For those of you guys with a big head or a peanut head like myself, no problem, we'll find one that fits for you. Another popular one here are the camouflage Oregon State Beaver hats. A lot of guys here like to go hunting. A lot of guys love football, guys and gals, so you come down and show your love for both right here. Also, another one that I have my eye on personally is this Oregon State hat. Has a baseball brim, but kind of a beanie feel on the top, so best of both worlds. Thinking about getting this myself, like I said. But hey, if these aren't the selections for you, let's go check out the cold weather hats. One of my personal favorites for the ladies is this bling bling beaver beanie. For those of you that like to be a little bit more flashy, if a beanie's too much and a scarf is too much, try on one of the headbands and just cover up your ears, knock off that little chippiness at a cold weather game. For the fellas, so many beanies for you to choose from. I can't pick them up all. However, one of my personal favorites is this one right here with the old classic Beanie the Beaver. Come on down and you can get a beanie like me that I'm wearing right now with the tassels. We have everything you need here and more at the OSU Beaver Store. Fans start here.
And the Beavers are major underdogs heading into Husky Stadium this weekend. Most pundits expecting another rout for Washington, who, of course, is trying to make its way into the college football playoffs. So a very tough test ahead for the Beavers. We're going to check back in with Mike Parker in Corvallis. Mike, a year ago, this team was 7-6 under Chris Peterson. What has he done to make this team so successful in the little time that he's been in Washington?
In his third year, Amanda, it's remarkable, really, how quickly they've turned. He went 8-6, then 7-6, as you referenced, and this year they have so many pieces in place now to make a serious run at a Pac-12 title and perhaps more. But it's simply because Chris Peterson's one of the great coaches in the country. He brought a plan in. He put his stamp very early on the program. But you hate to use the phrase, but running some players off, establishing a real sense of discipline. And let's not forget that Steve Sarkisian, whom he succeeded, left him quite a bit of talent, too, in recruiting, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And with his own wizardry on offense and with a great coordinator that we love out of Beaver Nation in Jonathan Smith, a brilliant quarterback, a versatile offense, an opportunistic defense that takes it away more often than any team in the country, Chris Peterson has everything in place to make a very good run this year.
And we have seen some pretty incredible wins from Washington. I mean, beating up on Stanford like they did, beating up on Oregon like they did. Is this a playoff team?
I think so. I think that they have a great shot based on the rest of their schedule. I think they very well could be one of the top 4 teams and maybe the last team standing because of their ability on both sides of the football. I see no discernible weakness in this team. And you mentioned Don James earlier and Chris Peterson. And I mean, this is a program that is in a position with a coach like Chris Peterson, very similar in spirit to Don James, but it was a Don James coach team that was favored by 38 in 1985 and lost to the Beavers with a backup quarterback. So, we in Beaver Nation like historical parallels when they're like that, so we'll see what plays out Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, certainly a great memory for Beavers fans. Thanks, Mike. And here's a look at the remaining games on the Huskies schedule. They meet the 21st ranked Utah the week after the Beavers game, followed by Cal, USC, Arizona State, and Washington State. Who do you guys think gives them the most trouble?
The Apple Cup is going to be awesome this year.
Yeah,
I'm looking at that schedule. I
down to
think
it.
Oregon State is the first real test for Washington, man.
All right, good work.
That defense
That's okay.
is the first real test.
I really like. We need some actual
Seriously, though,
orange-colored
who do
glasses.
they really play on there?
Washington State is good.
Stanford's down, though. Coach, the quarterback play hasn't been where it's been in years, you know?
They are down, but they're still good.
You're right.
And they didn't just beat them.
They annihilated them.
It was I at some point I actually felt, Lindsay, did you feel? I actually felt bad. I was like, ooh, like I didn't think, oh my, please stop.
I think
Like, in
David
this
Shaw
game.
didn't even he said something in post game about someone said, that's the worst you've probably ever played, and David Shaw goes, that's the nicest thing that someone said tonight.
So is a one-loss Washington team still a playoff team?
Okay, this is a great question. I think this is really hard. The Big Ten is really tough. I think there's a good shot that 2 Big Ten teams go. We saw a great game this last Saturday between Ohio State and Wisconsin. What if Wisconsin wins out and wins the Big Ten championship game? I don't think anyone from the Big 12 is going to get in. I think that people would love to see a Louisville-Clemson rematch, but people are kind of down on the ACC because Florida State's not very good. So I think that Washington just needs to go undefeated, because the thing is, if you have that loss and if you have it late in the season, like to Washington State, stays in the voters' minds a little bit more. And they didn't have a great preseason schedule, to make someone say, oh, but they beat so-and-so.
If Michigan, Ohio State, Washington all had one loss in addition to, say, a Louisville, then Washington would get in. I think the problem becomes if somebody is undefeated in the SEC and somebody's undefeated in the Big Ten and somebody's undefeated in the Big 12, now once you kind of have all those covered, I think 2 one-loss teams coming from the same conference over a one-loss Washington might cause a full-scale riot.
And also, Boise State is probably going to go undefeated, and then it's going to be
no
chaos.
chance on God's green
We're
earth
gonna wait
that
and
Boise
see.
State would get in over any one-loss. And be honest with you, a lot of 2-loss teams. A 2-loss Michigan team would get in before Boise State.
That's why I'm a fan of 6 to 8 teams.
Hands down.
Going out on a
'Cause
limb.
who could Boise say they played? I mean, honestly, they would have nobody on their schedule. If Washington State, they beat a Washington State team that lost to an FCS team at home by 3. And then other than that, San Diego State's fallen off the map. Oregon State is probably their next best win. I mean, they play they play Wyoming. And, I mean, their league is so
They're going to play
incredibly
BYU this week.
I'm just,
We'll see.
BYU right now.
I am a
what's their
Boise
record?
State believer.
We need to get 6 to 8 teams in the playoffs. Let's add some more teams to the playoffs.
You know what's interesting? I have to say this really fast. I did the mock selection a couple of weeks ago that the College Football Playoff Committee puts on every year in Dallas, and they had a bunch of former players who work for ESPN do it the night before us, and all the former players said they didn't want 8 teams because they didn't want that extra game and extra wear and tear on their bodies.
All right. Coming up next, we're wrapping things up. Our analysts give you their X Factors for Saturday. And don't forget to catch us on #Beavers Football this week. It's going to be Thursday at 9 p.m. We will break down more of Saturday's game against Washington. But before we get to our X Factors, our X Factor here, one of them is having a very special day today.
Oh, God.
We got some music. We've got some gifts.
Hey.
What's going on? I want everyone to know it's the...
Hey, we got the 2. There you go.
I think you
said
actually
you wanted
did
it.
say that. Yeah.
Come on, we just killed it. I just killed it. There we go.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday, Lance.
Hey, when's Doc's birthday? So we can recycle this. We gotta don't throw that away.
This is the first anniversary of my 29th birthday. I very much appreciate this.
It will be
deserve
our
it.
official birthday crown. Yeah.
You deserve it.
Do you want the wand?
I'll take the one. Magic. Oregon State defense. Let's go.
All right, we're going to let the birthday girl go first with her X Factor. Lindsay, who you got?
It has to be the offensive line. They have to keep some people healthy. This looks really good.
Picture of that.
We've got to see. I'm concerned about if everyone can stay healthy through the rest of the year. Nigel, stop laughing at my crown. So can the offensive line keep that defensive line away? It's going to be really, really tough. So, and can the offensive line stay healthy too? I mean, no, they're dropping like flies at this point.
All right, next, the man with the wand.
The man with the wand, my X factor for the game game is going to be with the guy that, has all eyes on him. We're going to sprinkle a little of this magic fairy birthday dust on my guy Marcus right here. You look at him throwing a touchdown. That's a great throw between two defenders. Marcus, please take advantage of this opportunity, the opportunity of a lifetime. You never know again when you have a chance to start for a Pac-12 team. Please take the moment and seize it.
All right, Nigel.
Just when you watch the Washington football team, in particular their offense, John Ross and Dante Pettis, Chico McClatchy, that receiving core is what really gets it going. So my X factor is going to be Xavier Crawford and Tristan Deku. If they can figure out a way to just slow this offense down to where they have to earn their way down the field, I think they can keep Oregon State in the game as long as possible.
So with these very large spreads, I mean, do you think that they're going to keep it under 38 points or
no?
Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, they got run out of the building by Colorado. I think Washington is a lot better. But I am happy to be proven wrong.
Under 38.
Yeah, it's we talked off camera about whether Chris Peterson is the kind of guy who runs up scores.
And
that's just not what he does. But then you start thinking about the college football playoff. And if you're not playing great competition, you have to bury people. That's what this team has been doing. Yeah, we'll see.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.